I remember the day I married Tessa Langford, like it was yesterday. Standing there in my rented tuxedo, I felt like the luckiest man alive. She was breathtaking in her white dress, smiling at me as if I was her whole world. But the moment we stepped into her family space, something shifted. Her mother, Judith, greeted me with a tight-lipped smile, the kind that masked disapproval beneath a thin layer of politeness. It wasn't warm, wasn't genuine, just a performance. I could feel her assessing me, silently deciding I wasn't good enough, like a cheap imitation of something she wished Tessa had chosen differently. And then there was Grant, her brother, lounging in the corner with a beer in hand, smirking at me like he held some secret I wasn't on. He had a habit of bringing up Miles at every opportunity. Tessa's ex-husband, the golden boy they all still seemed to adore. Miles loved these family gatherings, he'd say, casually slipping his name into conversations just to remind me I didn't measure up. Tessa would brush it off. Fingers grazing my arm as she whispered, "They're just old school. Don't take it personally." But how could I not? It was always the same. Judith's stiff courtesy, Grant's jabs, Tessa pretending it was harmless fun. I'd sit through elaborate meals, feigning interest as they reminisce about Miles, the man who could do no wrong. He knew how to handle the boat, brought the best wine, fit seamlessly into their polished world. And me? I was an outsider, a downgrade, a mistake they wish she hadn't made. I came from a modest background, a child who'd spent in a small house with a father who fixed cars and a mother who worked long hours at a cafe. The Langfords, on the other hand, had wealth, status, a name that carried weight. I kept showing up for Tessa, convincing myself her love was enough to bridge the gap. But each time I caught Judith's icy stare or heard Grant's mocking laughter, doubt crept in like a slow-moving shadow. Then came Thanksgiving. I didn't want to go, had no interest in sitting through another evening of veiled insults. But Tessa pleaded, eyes soft with that persuasive charm she always wielded so well. "It's tradition," she coaxed, and I caved. The Langford estate was as imposing as ever, its grandeur almost suffocating. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of expensive wine and perfectly prepared dishes. Judith greeted us with her usual mechanical smile and led us into the dining room. That's when my stomach dropped. The table was set to perfection. Crystal glasses, elegant place settings, but one detail made my pulse pound. Among the name cards, written in Judith's unmistakable cursive, was one that didn't belong. Miles. My throat tightened. His name, his place at the table, as if he'd never left. Judith followed my gaze and, with a saccharine smile, murmured, "We like to honor tradition." I turned to Tessa, expecting, hoping she would say something to make this less humiliating, but she only smirked, a cruel twist of her lips, and slid an envelope onto my plate. "Mom thinks you should sign now," she said casually, like she was asking me to pass the salt. Divorce papers. Already signed. For a moment, everything around me blurred. The sounds of their laughter, the clinking of silverware. I looked around the table. Grant wore that self-satisfied grin. Judith sipped her wine with cool indifference, and Tessa simply watched, waiting to see how I would react. This wasn't dinner. It was an ambush. Humiliation burned through me, but I swallowed it down. Every instinct told me to yell, to demand answers, to ask Tessa how she could do this after everything. But I didn't. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and pressed play. Miles' voice cut through the air, sharp and exasperated. "Tessa, stop dragging me into your family's games. I'm not getting back with you. I don't care what your mother thinks." The reaction was instant. Judith's fork clattered against her plate. Grant's grip on his wine glass slipped. And Tessa, her smirk vanished, her lips parting in silent shock. I leaned back, folding the divorce papers in my lap, my voice steady as I asked, "Care to explain?" Silence. Not a single word. Because they all knew I wasn't the mistake they thought I was. I wasn't some pushover, some clueless fool they could discard without consequence. I had flipped their carefully crafted game upside down. Judith's expression twisted with barely restrained fury, pacing like a woman grasping for control. Marina, Tessa's cousin, the only one who had ever treated me decently, shook her head, betrayal lacing her voice. I trusted you, Tessa, she murmured. I thought we had something real. Oddly, I felt that sting too. The weight of the moment settled over me. I had spent weeks piecing things together, collecting fragments of truth that didn't quite fit. Now, the picture was complete, and there was no going back. Tessa wept into her hands, but I felt nothing. Not anymore. Judith spun on me, voice sharp with blame. This is your fault, Brandon. You push her into this. You never fit with us. I met her gaze unmoved. She was scrambling, desperate to pin this on me. But we both knew the truth. I had never fit into their world. And now, I never had to try again.